On the Pittsburgh Hockey Now and the National Hockey Now YouTube channel, I am Dan Kingerski. Another post-game Q&A and another angry fan base. Boy, the Penguins' volatility, in Coach Mike Sullivan's words, are just on full display on a nightly basis, isn't it? And listen, we're going to get to all the Q's and the A's, but first, do me a favor. I want you to go over here, the little subscribe button, subscribe to the channel. And hey, if you like the video, click on a like as well. I'm not above a pity like. So do it. And yes, I look a little bit different. This is the home studio now. No longer in the downtown office. I gave that up just a couple of weeks ago now. I never used it anymore, right? I didn't have time for the live chats, and I didn't have time to go in and set up and spend an hour screwing around and then another hour doing it and then another hour publishing it. It was just 3 hours out of my day that needed to be spent elsewhere. And if you've been following National Hockey Now and all of our writers on Twitter and some of our former writers, you know, there's been a lot going on. It's been a little bit of a time of upheaval, and I've been running a company. However, I'm 95% sure of two things are going to happen in the next 2 months. One, there will be finally a podcast network for National Hockey Now. We found the right folks. They came to us and said, let's do it. And I really liked them. They didn't take themselves too seriously. They know what they can do, and they're like, okay, we can extrapolate this or project that. If you can do this, like, great, let's do this. So I really do believe you're going to see a podcast network coming very soon. And we finally made the decision. We kind of pulled the plug on that company that was supposed to give us the universal subscription and bring all the sites together with all the bells and whistles. After a year, it just wasn't close enough. And I had to make the hard call there and make a difficult communication saying, hey, we appreciate y'all, we like you, but, you know, it's not you, it's us. We're really not in that place right now. No, actually, I said it was you, not us. Anyway, that's everything going on. So let's get to the questions here, because the Penguins lose to the Detroit Red Wings. What was the final score? 7-4. It was not just a missed opportunity. It was a horribly missed opportunity. It was one the Penguins didn't seem to show up for. It was one the Penguins didn't seem to want. And look, on what day is today? Tuesday, I kind of took some Penguins fans to the woodshed. Like, enough with the doom and gloom. Every time a bump in the road, oh, they're going to lose in the first round. The first round is still 3 weeks away. You don't get extra points for being Chicken Little. Let's focus on the here and the now. Let's focus on the single game and the playoff chase. Before you go swan diving with a 2.5 somersault pike off the Fort Pitt Bridge, let's maybe just take some perspective here. If I had told you in September that Casey DeSmith would have to play about 40 games, Sidney Crosby would have more than a point per game, probably closing in on 90 points before the season's over. Evgeny Malkin was more than a point per game. If I had told you these things and the Penguins were 3 points into a playoff spot, despite Casey DeSmith having to play half the season, would you have taken it? Yeah, you would have. If I had told you that Jeff Carter would run out of gas, almost from the drop of the puck this season, although he's having a bit of a resurgence, let's not overlook it. But if I had told you that and all of these things would go wrong for the Penguins, and they were still 3 points into a playoff spot, would you have taken it? Yes. Now, I am smart enough to look ahead to the potential playoff matchups and know the Penguins have an uphill fight. I also know it's not unheard of to get it together in the last 2 weeks of the season. Ask the LA Kings of 2012 and go on a run. Some things have to happen, of course. But you don't get extra points for throwing in the towel at this point. I don't understand that level of fandom. And I kind of called somebody out tonight. Somebody just was like, oh, this is terrible. I'm never watching again. I hate these guys and they're going to lose. Like, why are you still participating in the process then? If you have come to the conclusion that all hope is lost, and I'm drawing a blank on my buddy Dante's, the Latin version of abandon all hope. Drawing a blank on it, driving me nuts. So much for high school Latin, right? But why? Why bother? The Penguins looked terrible on Tuesday. They had a couple of power play goals in a 55-second span, no less. They came back to tie the game at 3. They came back to tie the game at 4. But in reality, they never were in gear on Tuesday. The report card goes very deep into it. Some of the things they didn't do. Detroit gave them opportunities and lanes, and the Penguins really didn't take full advantage of it. The Penguins didn't play with the puck down low nearly enough. I thought the Malkin line did. I didn't think the Crosby line did. Nor did I think the Ryan Poehling line really took advantage of their opportunities in the offensive zone. Thought the defense was chasing Detroit all night long, which is kind of to be expected. And I get it that Chad Ruhwedel and Mark Friedman are a pairing still, and I get it that that's not going to be Brian Dumoulin's game. If the Penguins draw New Jersey in some way, shape, or form, Dumoulin's really going to have a rough series. There's no question about it. They had opportunities. They really could have exploited Detroit's weaknesses. Detroit is soft. Detroit is not hard on the puck. So the Penguins countered by being softer and softer on the puck. And I'll give Mike Sullivan credit. He didn't blow a gasket in the postgame. I think many of you, and even me watching it for maybe different reasons than fans would have blown a gasket. Tonight would have been the night I probably walked in the locker room and broke a stick. Tonight probably would have been the night that I let him have it. They are still 3 points up on the Florida Panthers, now 3 points back of the New York Islanders with 1 game in hand. So they still control their fate, at least for the second wild card, no longer for the first wild card. Let's get to the questions here. I'm going to do them in in chronological order. So the first in gets... Oh, wait, is that... So Twitter has not listed them in any sort of order. I see some that were over 1 hour ago and some were 16 minutes ago interspersed. I'm going to start at the bottom. How's that? From As I See It, I'm just tired of this team. I'm tired of their slow starts. I'm tired of their stupidity. I'm tired of the horrible goaltending. I'm tired of the late game penalties. I'm tired of Granlund passing up good shots. I'm tired, boss. I think that stands on its own without comment from me, doesn't it? Chicken 1. Sullivan needs to be relieved of his duties. Continues to play guys who stink, get regular shifts. Rust is stealing money. Plays top minutes. Granlund stinks and plays all 3 phases. Head coach gotta go. Okay. Exactly which players is Sullivan playing Rust and Granlund over? Where are these magical players? I mean, have I missed like the entire different farm system the Penguins have where all the really good players are hiding? Are they just prancing around like unicorns and rainbows somewhere else that's secret? And Chicken 1 knows where they are. I don't know if you know this. Valtteri Puustinen hasn't scored a goal in like over a month. I get the frustration with Granlund. I'm going to be criticizing Granlund here pretty harshly pretty soon. Brian Rust is an entirely different matter. So let's dive into the Brian Rust situation. Because I even got a couple emails. I'm sorry, folks, I'm not going to get into an email conversation. The aforementioned business owner has to take care of more pressing matters. Twitter is just fine for a conversation. Rust is actually playing a pretty good game. He's getting the scoring chances. Dude's hitting the post, hitting the goalie. His stick probably is warped from how tight he is gripping it. But he's still playing a good game. Maybe call him a $5 million Dominic Simone right now, where he's only a 0.5 point per game player. He's not stealing money. That's a gross overreaction, and you kind of lose a bit of credibility if you go that far on Brian Rust. I mean, the guy's killing penalties. He's playing top minutes because in this universe that we live in, Granlund is not playing well. He's not producing. Not really a good fit. I mean, that's going to be a contract that hangs on Ron Hextall like a bad necktie. So you've got Granlund on the right side. You've got Raquel, Rust, Granlund, and Archibald. Are you, in fact, saying that Archibald should move to the top six? Please tell me no. Please tell me that's not what you mean. Are you advocating creating a player in the locker room like PlayStation? Just give him all kinds of attributes and send him out there. In Archibald's jersey, maybe. Y'all sometimes make my head hurt. Let's see here. Dean Bumbaco, has anyone seen Casey DeSmith? He was last spotted sliding past his net. Yeah, that's a little bit fair after tonight, isn't it? He's been really good in March. And then he gets the start in a crucial game that the team turns to him. Where have you gone, Casey DeSmith? A lonely Penguins turn their eyes to you. My question is, I've seen this all year. Are coaches seeing this guy lose the net? Why hasn't it been fixed? I mean, if you could make every player an all-star, don't you think they would? I mean, it's maybe putting a little bit too much. I mean, look, Casey DeSmith is a good backup goalie in the NHL. He was hot. I advocated starting him on Tuesday. Mike Sullivan obviously agreed. Ride the hot hand. If Casey DeSmith plays like he did against the Capitals, the Penguins win on Tuesday. That's just a simple fact. But he didn't. He played like a backup goalie. And he got some bad breaks. And then with the game on the line, he did slide past his net. Bob Airy, I think, on the broadcast called that out. I don't know if Phil Bork on the radio side did. Casey DeSmith is 31 years old. He's not like a 24-year-old with a ton of potential learning to play the game. What you get is, or what you have is what you get with Casey DeSmith. So, I mean, sure, you can work on things. You work on things every day in practice. But if everybody could be made into an all-star, the league would be complete parity, wouldn't it? Or everybody would be as good as Connor McDavid. Everyone would skate like Connor McDavid, and everybody would shoot a backhander like Sidney Crosby. Why don't they work on it? Just, these are special human beings, and literally 0.1% of performance makes a huge difference at that level. It's kind of crazy. Let's see here. Going up, G-Star. Everybody wanted Casey in the nets, and I get it. I mean, hey, I advocated it. I'll take the, it was the right decision. Doesn't mean it has to work out, but it was the right decision. But he's just an overpaid backup. Actually, he's kind of underpaid. But anyway, $1.8 million for a backup goalie in today's NHL is probably a few $100,000 shy of the average for somebody with his experience and career numbers. Look at Vegas. Brassard and who's the other goalie? It's not Eric Comrie. They had like 4 goalies behind Logan Thompson, or with Logan Thompson rather. There's another AHL goalie. I'm blanking on him as well, but they were all $2 million. So DeSmith, actually, I wouldn't say he's overpaid. Let's see here. Tristan Jarry, the one we saw in Denver, is the Penguins' only hope to make any noise. Problem is health and consistency. Yeah, I mean, I think I said that on TV, or maybe it was with Paul Zeiss on The Fan Monday night. Yes, a hot Casey DeSmith can help get you to the playoffs, but if the Penguins want to upset, in fact, I think I wrote it. Sorry, I'm all over. I'm a complete media whore at this point, aren't I? I have trouble keeping track of what I say where. Fortunately, I haven't vacillated on my beliefs, so it's all the same thing everywhere, at least in terms of, the same questions, give maybe different colorful answers, but it's all the same content, or at least the same thoughts, conclusions. If they want to upset Carolina or Boston, they will need Tristan Jarry, and they will need Tristan Jarry with his A game. None of this half, B minus game. They need Jarry. They need Jarry at A plus. No question about it, G-Star. Rick Barry. Better off not making the playoffs and getting a higher draft pick. By what, 2 spots? I have to put some duct tape on my head so when it explodes, you can all find the pieces. More reason to find a new general manager and blow this thing up. I'm pretty sure Ron Hextall didn't play on Tuesday. Anyway. Was goaltending an overlooked need? Asks sports fan. Well, no. Listen, last deadline, Ron Hextall was looking for a backup goalie. And I would probably venture that he made a few phone calls at this year's NHL trade deadline for a backup goalie. The reality is, well, Granlund kind of blows up this theory, but let's just say you think Granlund is the missing piece on the Penguins' third line. Let's give the benefit of the doubt in the decision-making process here. The Penguins were still dollar in, dollar out. Where are you going to find $2 million for a backup goalie? That's number one. And yes, you can say, well, don't acquire Granlund. And I would say, well, okay. There's probably some truth to that. Find somebody cheaper. What's done is done. Getting to DeSmith, though. So, 1, you didn't have the money. 2, there was nobody available. I mean, go back to the NHL trade deadline and what goalies were dealt. I don't think any. At least none of note or consequence. So if there was one that I'm forgetting about was dealt, probably the price was a premium because only one changed hands. There really isn't. The goaltending situation in the National Hockey League right now is very similar to the quarterbacking situation in the NFL. You have your people you want, and that's 1/3 of the class. You have another 1/3 of the class that's serviceable. And then you have another 1/3, rough numbers of course, that aren't really serviceable. And that extends into backups. Only a handful of teams have some good backups. Florida had a couple of good goalies. I know Spencer Knight's dealing with some personal issues. The Islanders have Sorokin and Varlamov, so they're doing pretty well. Boston has Ullmark, who's been the surprise, I think, of the season. I don't think anyone thought Ullmark had this in him. And Jeremy Swayman. And they're not going to deal Swayman until they're really sold for another year or so on Ullmark. Montreal has Jake Allen, who's quite expensive, and Steve Montembeault. They're not going to give up Montembeault because he's actually taking the starter's net. So they might give up Jake Allen, but he's way too expensive for a backup goalie. So I've probably done way too much time on goalies for you, haven't I? But I'm trying to set the record straight here. If you're going to criticize, and there's ample space and room for criticism of Ron Hextall. I'm not defending the job Hextall has, or the results that Hextall has gotten. But I guess what I am trying to do is set you with the proper context and facts so that you can channel your energy in the appropriate ways to criticize. Sometimes I'm moving on. Chris V. Dan, I think Hextall needs to go immediately following the season. But my question is Sullivan's job in jeopardy at all? I'm a big supporter, but it seems lately he has begun to lose the team. And far too many games, they are out-coached and not prepared from the start. I think those are two different issues that you're kind of mushing together a little bit there, Chris. Let's start just from the top. Should Hextall be fired after the season? I'm not prepared to go there, only because I don't want to advocate either way on that. It doesn't behoove me to take a position there as a beat reporter covering the Pittsburgh Penguins for Pittsburgh Hockey Now. That's a big call to make. I do think that Ron Hextall should be called to account by ownership. And a legitimate and real conversation should be had, reviewing the process by which they're acquiring players, the process by which they're building and rebuilding, because I don't think any of you are looking at the picture in quite the same way I'm about to. All right, Chris, so buckle up. This might take about 2 minutes. Obviously, the flashpoints are Jeff Carter's second year. Acquiring Mikael Granlund, paying Brock McGinn for 4 years and then not getting much from him. I was kind of meh on the McGinn signing, but really Brian Burke talked him up so much. I'm like, okay, well let's see. That never worked, quite frankly. It never gave the Penguins what they needed, but what are your other... Kasperi Kapanen. That was horribly botched from the start. Then again, Kapanen has had 6 goals in his first 10 games. I think he has another 1 or 2 since then in St. Louis. Kapanen is good when he's motivated. And you can tell me that Mike Sullivan was at fault. I will tell you the player was at fault. The player had to find it. Look, the player has it. When he goes to St. Louis, gets a fresh start, takes a deep breath, and puts the puck in the net. What prevented him from doing that in Pittsburgh? The player. The player played top 6, top line, third line, power play, was given every opportunity last season and at the beginning of this season. Eventually, the coach has to say enough is enough. And Sullivan probably gave Kapanen far more leash than he has other players. But to Ron Hextall, I think Hextall has to be called to account because the signing of Kapanen was as risky, or actually it had a higher probability of failing than it did of succeeding. That was a Hail Mary. Okay, 1 year you take a Hail Mary, but two years on the Hail Mary or on the hope. That's the part that becomes very difficult to give a pass and very difficult to swallow or analyze in any positive way. There's no positive way to spin that. There's just none, giving that second year. So should Hextall be fired? I'm not taking a position. I'm saying Hextall should be grilled after the season. And if ownership is happy that he's got a plan going forward, because now here's the second level of this. We've now laid out the bad NHL decisions. In 2 years, teams are signing NCAA free agents right now. They're bringing players over from Europe. The Penguins aren't yet. The Penguins haven't brought anybody over. They don't really have anybody to bring over. They're not getting these NCAA free agents. Wilkes-Barre signed University of Denver's captain on Tuesday. It was kind of a ho-hum sort of signing. Otherwise, he would be an NHL contract, not an AHL contract. And I know there'll be people who blow it up and, oh, look, he was the captain of Denver. He might, let's see what he can do. Let's pump the brakes. It was an AHL contract, not an NHL, not even a two-way. So he's a minor league player, and there's as good of a chance he winds up in Wheeling as he does in Wilkes-Barre. The Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins are terrible. Hextall's had 2 drafts. He's had 2 years to find college free agents and 2 years to make some trades, maybe to find some people to play in Wilkes-Barre, but they're brutal. There are absolutely no centers in the organization. None. There are some college defenders, Jack St. Ivany, or Ivani. We were saying Ivany in training camp. There's a couple of the college guys they got that actually might not be too bad eventually. They, might be a depth NHL defenseman. I don't see it happening right now. But Wilkes-Barre is worse off than they were 2 years ago. So Hextall was not surrounding the couple or a few prospects that he does have with any talent down there. There's no center to distribute the puck to Puustinen. There's no center to play with Legare. There's just nothing down there. And that is as bad as anything, because AHL players, these guys are moving around all the time. It's not like, they stay in one city for 15 years and make a fortune. They're always shuffling to the next situation wherever they're needed, kind of thing. They're journeymen. So, yeah, Hextall needs to answer some real tough questions. Now, Mike Sullivan losing the team, I just don't think so. I don't think anybody, Scotty Bowman, Gene Ubriaco, Genghis Khan, could coach this team. They just don't. They don't have enough heart right now. They're still too old in spirit. They got a playoff lead and they relaxed again. This team keeps relaxing. This team keeps taking the foot off the gas. This team lacks the ability to gear up for longer periods of time. If there's one reason that they can't pull an upset in the playoffs, it's because they can't bring it every night for more than a couple nights, more than a few nights in a row. That's the big problem. Couple good games, and they seem to just have this mental switch, and they flatline. One would think the playoff pressure cooker would negate their flatlining for several games here. But this season, look, if there's one huge worry after the Detroit loss, it's the fact that the Penguins could continue to flatline, because that's been the streak all season. 3-4 good games, 10 terrible games. Victor Jason says, can't wait to hear all the excuses from players and coaches. Okay. Check out the Penguins locker room feature on Pittsburgh Hockey Now then, Victor. El Fusco, Saturday. They looked like a team desperate and hungry for the playoffs. They did for 2.5 periods. Tonight, they looked like they're tanking for Bedard. Still no idea who this team is. Good, yeah, that's a good point. How can the fans be invested in them going forward? Well, there is a great question that I can answer pretty easily. Because you're fans. Is fandom predicated upon being rewarded with a Stanley Cup or victories? Is fandom only about reflected glory? Is fandom only about picking the winner? Otherwise, And I guess every year everybody would just draw up new teams and say, okay, I think this team is going to be fun to watch and win. And everybody just reorganize their loyalties and sensibilities. Why should fans invest? It's because you go through the good times and the bad times. You hope for better in the bad. You hope for the best in the good. You're rarely rewarded either way. You are rarely, think about how many teams haven't won a Stanley Cup in your lifetime. I don't know how old you are. The Flyers have not won a Stanley Cup in my lifetime. Why should fans invest in the Flyers? That's probably a bad question to ask a bunch of Penguins fans. Until 2018, until 2018. The Washington Capitals had never won a Stanley Cup, couldn't seem to get past the Islanders in the 80s, couldn't get past the Penguins in the 90s and the O's and the 10s. Why should fans have invested in them? Price says our netminders can't take us very far. Well, that's possibly true. Here's the poor guy I picked on a little bit. I'm sorry, Josh. We did have a record number of submissions on Tuesday. Josh writes this on Twitter. Who even cares about this year? This team is going nowhere. They have shown us this all season. More importantly, will the goaltending tandem be fixed in the offseason? Or are we just going to continue with what has happened the last 3 years? Well, if you don't care, it is time to check out. But Josh, I'm pretty sure you and everybody else still care. And what I'm pushing you towards is to care about the moment, is to not get into defeatism in order to protect. Look, every team, 31 teams lose the Stanley Cup every year. 16 teams won't even get to play in the playoffs. There's no nobility to missing the playoffs. There's no nobility in that. Missing the playoffs by a point or two might cost Ron Hextall his job. But the reality is, if 1 or 2 points is the dividing line, then it's a bad decision. Ron Hextall's job should be in trouble regardless of those 1 or 2 points that get the Penguins into the playoffs. Or it should be safe regardless of those 1 or 2 points. That is such a small difference. So, will the goaltending be fixed in the offseason? Let's talk about that. And that is going to be a really complex answer. I'm probably going to end up writing thousands of words on it beginning, the moment of the offseason, probably the next day of the offseason. First column out of the chute might be goaltending. And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know what's really going to be available to the Penguins. Look, we know John Gibson wants out of Anaheim. But we also know the Penguins have nothing to give for him. Jake Gensel. That's kind of what it would cost. Since the Penguins can't give up their first round pick, although maybe you do give it up for a goalie like Gibson. But it's still a first round pick and. So are you giving up Rickard Rakell back to Anaheim? Oh, give up Brian Rust! You mean the same guy you just told me sucked and was stealing money? Give him up. See how this kind of goes? See how this works? If you're mad at a player, other people also see that, he's struggling. I don't know, maybe a first and Brian Rust would get you John Gibson. I gotta think that Anaheim could get more elsewhere. We don't live in a vacuum, right? So I honestly don't know what happens to the goaltending tandem or situation. I really don't. I think economics are going to play a huge factor in that. If Tristan Jarry asks for 6 and 7 million, you probably say no and take your chances with a tandem or whatever you can scrape together. But if he says, all right, give me a bridge, give me a couple year deal. I'm not seeing what I like on the market. 2 years, 8 million, 3 years, 12 million, even 3 years, 15 million. Yeah, you probably do it. But he's not going to ask for a bridge. He's an unrestricted free agent. He's going to cash in. He's probably going to want, a good bit of money. Drummer Jamie says, another failure of the GM. Well, he wasn't playing tonight. Not getting any goaltending at the deadline and wasting another year of the 3 pillars. Well, I mean, like I said just a few minutes ago, Drummer Jamie, that there was nobody really on the market. And the Penguins had to prioritize their needs. You can, again, holler about Granlund all you want, that they should have saved a few $1 million there and got somebody different and cheaper and all of that. And I would probably agree with you. However, what was done, and Hextall made his choices if you don't get anybody for the third line. I mean, look, the Penguins' recent resurgence has in large part been because of a competent third and fourth line. And Granlund is a part of that. Granlund's not putting anything on the score sheets. I get that. But like tonight, that neat little pass to Malkin to Zucker to get the goal. He does those little things like that has improved the Penguins' third line. So, on a nightly basis, what is more important, a backup goalie or the Penguins' third line? Third line, actually. And if you say they should have added a goalie, you have to tell me who they could have gotten. I mean, that's an honest-to-God question. I'm not putting you down, or everybody's saying, oh, they needed a backup goalie. It's easy to say. But to do, whole different ballgame. Wildly different game, because I don't think Vegas was parting with Laurent Brossoit. And quite frankly, he was a .900 save percentage goalie anyway. You would have piled on him as not good enough, because he's kind of not. He's another Casey DeSmith. If that good. And Carolina wasn't giving up any of their goalies to Pittsburgh. The Islanders weren't giving up Varlamov to the Penguins. Boston wasn't giving up Jeremy Swayman. And the one in Montreal was probably havable, gettable, cost way too much money, and again wouldn't be any better. So it's like, in theory, you're correct. On paper, you're correct, but in practice and reality, it doesn't follow through. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny, because they're just like, who are you going to get? To show me, what the hell is Brian Rust still doing on the first line? Invisible game once again for Crosby's line. Well, Crosby's line did fight to a draw with Andrew Kopp. That was not a great night for Crosby, but Kopp is a very good defensive center. He's given Crosby fits for years. Again, the Brian Rust stuff. He's playing so well. He had scoring chances tonight. He just drills the goalie, hits the post. He's just, that snake. He might as well be like Jake the Snake Roberts and carry the snake in the bag with a big hole in the side. Just keeps biting him. He has been snake bitten for a couple months. But he's still playing decent hockey, and that's why he's up on the top line, because he's a talented player. And when he breaks through, when the light shines upon him, like the Blues Brothers, have you seen the light? When all of that happens, Rust is going to go on a tear like you haven't seen But as a coach, you have to just keep grinding through it until it happens. Or you hit the off season, one of the two. Let's see here. JW, no questions. Have lost any care in this team? Well, I appreciate you responding anyway. Just give me all the clicks on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Just keep clicking. Just click on all the articles. Okay, we're getting towards the top here. Let's see here. Unknown Patriot. Boy, that term scares me nowadays. Can you see the book? Yeah, you can see the book in my background. Anywho, any good team would be licking their chops to play a team like Detroit. I've cleaned this up for YouTube. I took a word out. He didn't use the word team like Detroit. Excrement was a funny word for excrement. At this point in the season, any good team would want to play Detroit at this point in the season. Instead, the Penguins gave up a touchdown. Yeah. This team excels at letting their foot off the gas. I don't know what to tell you. And that brings us to our merciful conclusion. If you've come this far, like and subscribe. I kind of feel like I'm not a Lord of the Rings guy. There's but one return, and it is of the Jedi. Still, if we've come this far, drop the ring in the volcano, click like and subscribe. I appreciate all of you. And if any of you are amateur bloggers, we'll be diving into some blogging in several cities and looking for folks looking for their big break. So find me on Twitter, find me an email, get in touch with me and say, Dan, I wanted to be a blogger forever. And I can almost string 3 sentences together without somebody having to correct spelling 6 times. That will be interesting. We'd love to hear from you because we have got so much going on at National Hockey Now. I don't know how to discuss. I mean, it's good, it's bad, it's chaos. It's dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. And that does it for me. Penguins are supposed to have practice on Wednesday. I haven't checked my email yet to see if they're going to have it. Oh, looks like so. I don't see a cancellation email just yet. So I guess they're going to practice Wednesday. They're back on the ice Thursday and off on Friday. Boy, that Thursday game is looking pretty big because they gave Florida hope on Tuesday. Above all, they gave Florida hope. Florida's lost 3 in a row, looking hopeless, and the Penguins just sent a little care package down to Sunrise. All right, I'm Dan Kingerski. You're not. Have fun.